You're gonna serve somebody in a booth or on the street. You're gonna serve somebody. Every vote, every voice, every tweet might be the law, the dollar, or the folks who can't speak loud. You're gonna serve somebody. So say who you're serving now. They got headlines dressed like heroes.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Serve Somebody with Steve and Emily podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm your host, Steve Bradshaw, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend and co-host, Emily Hallaby. Emily, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Steve. Today's Cinco de Mayo, so I'm kind of wishing we were doing this interview with a margarita in hand.
Oh, boy.
But we'll make do.
All right. Well, tell us what's on your mind today.
Well, I actually, other than margaritas, don't have a whole lot on my mind today.
Okay.
But I wanted to go back to a comment that you made during our first episode, which was that you describe yourself as being moderate to progressive with the exception of one point, which is law enforcement.
Right.
So I want you to dig in to that a little bit and tell us what you mean by that.
Yeah, happy to get into that. Yep, I do describe my operating political philosophy as moderate to progressive, with law enforcement being the one exception. So some people might refer to me as a law and order Democrat, which I realize that in some circles, very progressive circles, that is a pejorative. Doesn't bother me. It's an apt description, so I don't care about that. I prefer to think of myself as a common sense Democrat. And if you stand back and think about it, think about what are the opposites of the words law and order? Unlawful and disorder, lawlessness and chaos. Those are preferable to law and order? I don't think so. And often we as Democrats leave folks with the impression that we tend to care more about the perpetrators of crime than the victims of crime. And I would simply suggest that in most circles, that's a losing proposition to be branded that way. Certainly there are times when the police overstep, when they are, in fact, lawless. And when that happens, they should be prosecuted like everybody else.
Accountability is needed.
Absolutely.
In every facet of life.
Oh, no question. I'm a proponent of criminal justice reform for sure. When I was campaigning, I would talk about my approach to law enforcement being full spectrum, meaning everything from the prevention end to the enforcement end and everything in between. I won't take a deep dive on that now. I talked about it enough on the campaign trail, but I do believe in that. Now, I'll say a couple other things just to kind of wrap this up. I was never a police officer, but I was a soldier in a combat zone. So I know what it's like to wear body armor for hours and days at a time. It's not comfortable. It's not built like a suit jacket. I'll say one more thing pursuant to that. I know what it's like to walk out of my front door to leave for a deployment and not know if I'm ever going to come home again. So I identify with that headspace and that mindset, as plenty of our officers do. And then I'll just say one more thing to kind of put a bow on all of this. During all of my years in office, and all of the times I spent campaigning for office, I can't think of a single time when a constituent came up to me and said, you know what, Steve, we need fewer police. We need to pay them less. We need to treat them worse. Not once. So I think as we approach that, we should all be a little more thoughtful and a little more balanced in how we address all of that. So that's my 2 cents for the day on all of that. Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
Anything more you want to add?
I just would ask that Roy put in some Law and Order theme music
Oh.
just to highlight this episode, because that would be really fun for this episode.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that. It's a great TV show.
Yeah.
I've actually been binge watching that lately. You know, it's amazing what you can land on in the middle of the night when you wake up at 3 a.m. So you can just jump into a Law and Order episode right wherever it is and follow it to conclusion. So that franchise has had a very good run.
Boom, boom.
So thank you very much for that. So before we get into it today, I want to give a shout out to my good friends Mike and Rebecca Reeves and all of the wonderful folks at Reeves and Associates for sponsoring today's program. We really appreciate it. Today, we're very honored to have as our special guest DeKalb County District Attorney Sherry Boston. thank you so much for being with us today. As we begin, is there anything you would like to say?
I just want to thank both you and Emily for having me here. And I will note that, Law and Order is one of the longest running shows on television. It's not hard to throw a rock and find an episode at 2 in the morning.
Exactly. Very good. So thank you, Sherry. Sherry Boston has served as DeKalb County District Attorney since 2017. She is now in her third term in that role. And during her tenure, she has distinguished herself as not only a crime fighter, but as a leader in the criminal justice reform movement. Prior to being elected as DA, she served as the DeKalb County Solicitor General. And during my time in office, I grew to have tremendous respect for her leadership and management skills. Therefore, I was always happy to support the funding request and any initiatives that she brought to the County Commission. More importantly, and in the interest of full disclosure, I consider Sherry Boston to be a friend. And I will say here publicly what I've said to her privately on several occasions, which is that I will always be grateful for her support of my various campaigns. I do not take that lightly. Now, this does not mean we're going to take it easy on you.
You never do, Steve. You never do.
But I did want to state that very clearly for our audience. So why don't we just start with this? This is for the benefit of our audience. Explain the difference between what the district attorney does versus what the solicitor general does.
That is an excellent question, and one that I had to answer for so many years and still do. But the Solicitor General is an elected position in DeKalb County and many other larger municipalities that have a solicitor. And that is the elected prosecutor that's responsible for the prosecution of misdemeanor offenses, traffic offenses, and sometimes ordinances, depending on the way that that particular jurisdiction is set up. The district attorney has the primary responsibility of prosecuting felony cases as well as juvenile court cases. That's how it's here in DeKalb County. I will note, though, depending on where you live in the state of Georgia, you may just have a district attorney in your jurisdiction. And if you do, that DA would be responsible for the prosecution of all crimes, misdemeanors and felonies. But here in DeKalb County, given our large number of citizens and constituents in our jurisdiction, we have 2 elected prosecutors.
Interesting. Okay. We understand that your formal title, if I have this right, is District Attorney for the Stone Mountain Judicial Circuit.
Actually,
okay,
that has changed.
It has? Okay.
Yes,
Please update us.
The legislature changed the name of our circuit.
Okay.
We are no longer the Stone Mountain Judicial Circuit. We are the DeKalb Judicial Circuit.
Okay.
That went into effect in January of 2025.
Okay, so fairly recent.
Fairly recent. And we're
Okay.
still getting used to the name change, right?
Absolutely.
I still, every now and then, something will come across my desk and I'll be like, oops, we still haven't changed the name on that document or that letterhead. So we are officially the DeKalb Judicial Circuit. And so that name change was done by the legislature.
Why
Okay.
was that done?
Well, really, it was more to state sort of the name of who we are. Our circuit, the Stone Mountain Judicial Circuit, used to be comprised many years ago of both DeKalb County and Rockdale County.
Got it.
And then many years ago, there was a split, right, to for ease of work. So the Rockdale County became the Rockdale Circuit when they split off from Stone Mountain. Our name was never changed. And so just to sort of catch up with the times, I think the legislature and folks in the DeKalb delegation felt like it was good to have a name that was more reflective of the county and more obvious to constituents.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Right? Because everybody knows we live in DeKalb County, so
Right.
it made sense for it to be the DeKalb Judicial Circuit.
And what's a judicial circuit, and how many judicial circuits are there in the state of Georgia?
That is an excellent question. So, as you all know, we have 159 counties in the state of Georgia, but we only have 51 judicial circuits. And those 51 judicial circuits is how our courts are divided. So it's how you Your district attorney is a circuit, right? Your superior court judges represent a circuit. It's not necessarily individual counties, because there are some judicial circuits that have one county, like DeKalb, and there's some judicial circuits that have 5 or 6 counties, because it's a much larger landmass. In our rural areas, they are picking up smaller swaths of people over multiple counties. So in our law system, we operate in judicial circuits. And that's why the name sometimes can reflect the county. And that's why sometimes a name is just a name because they have 5 or 6 counties.
Understood. Okay.
So nearly 10 years in service in this role. What have been some of your biggest accomplishments?
Wow. I think I am really proud of the work that we've done since I took office in January of 2017. There are so many things that we've been able to accomplish, which is really exciting. But I would say the creation of a lot of our special units. When I came into office, we did not have a homicide and gang unit. When I came into office, we didn't have a digital forensics unit. When I came into office, we didn't have a firearm violence prevention unit or a cold case task force. And there are so many opportunities that we took to try to create niche areas in our office that could really be committed to a specific area of concern around public safety and protection in our community. So I've been really proud that we've been able to stand up so many of these units, and then the expansion of a number of the units that were already in the office to reflect the need to increase the number of people that we wanted working in those spaces.
Yeah, I would guess that the homicide unit stays fairly busy in DeKalb County.
Our homicide and gang unit is fairly busy. And I say that doesn't necessarily reflect that homicides are the number one crime in our office, because they're far from it.
Oh, interesting.
They're a really small percentage of the work that we do, but homicide cases require an intense amount of work, investigation, and preparation. And so having that standalone unit, which when I came in, we had 2 prosecutors dedicated to just homicides. We now have 10 plus a deputy chief that are dedicated to the prosecution of homicide. And so it allows our prosecutors to work in both a reactive way, but a proactive way, which is how we want to move. And that is really the backbone of how I wanted prosecution to be done in DeKalb, is that traditionally prosecutors work reactively, right? It's like something happens, somebody makes an arrest, a file comes on your desk, and you work it forward. That's reactive, right? For us, we also wanted to add in proactivity. How can we work on the front end to prevent crime? How can we work with law enforcement to solve crimes, right? How can we get to our bad actors, right, before they commit the next crime? And that type of proactivity can only be done when you are well-resourced.
Yeah. So speaking of that, how big is your team right now?
We have over 300 people in our office.
Wow.
And when I started on this journey and walked into office in 2017, we had about 157 employees. So we have grown tremendously over the time that I've been district attorney. And I've been really grateful to every CEO that I've worked with, every member of the BOC that I've worked with, to help me build out a team that I think is doing effective and really great work for the citizens of DeKalb County.
Yeah. You've also started the STRIDE program. Is that right?
Yes.
Can you tell us more about what that is?
Yes. So STRIDE stands for Stopping Trends of Incarceration through Education and through Diversion and Education.
Okay.
And so that is a diversion program, but it's a high-level diversion program, meaning the folks that we select to go into this have already had touches with the criminal justice system, either through juvenile court or through traditional adult court. It's a program that's not meant to be self-done or self-completed. It's a program where intervention and facilitators and folks are needed to help guide people through the process. It's a program that lasts 12 months with intense counseling, training, and the types of things that we do to try to change and curb behaviors. And it's been amazing to watch the primarily young people that have gone through this program and really alter the course that they're on, because now they're getting a chance. Not that they didn't have a chance before, because some of these folks have been through other programming, but this sometimes is the final stop. And it's a final place to sort of say, either I'm going to dig in and do something differently, and I've got this team of people around me that are willing to support me, or I'm going to continue down the road that I'm on, which likely means that I'm going to go to prison.
Mm-hmm. Are you working, is the team exclusively people in your department, or are you working with partners in the community to help?
It is a partnership. So we have a unit in our office that I started called DeKalb, and that stands for Diversion and Community Alternative Programming. And that unit's sole role in our office is to look at all the type of programming that's available to divert people away from the criminal justice system. Whether it's our STRIDE program, whether it's accountability courts, whether it's our restorative justice practices, it's all about those alternatives that are non-traditional, what we see on TV, right? Going to court. And those are all ways that we can really address the needs of the community, both perpetrators of crime as well as supporting victims of crime in that way. And so that unit works with our community partners. We partner with WorkSource DeKalb, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're a huge partner in our STRIDE program. We work with providers, right, to give mental health. We work with all agencies to educate our STRIDE participants on everything from the justice system to the education system. We work with partners to help them write resumes. All of these things are done in concert with the community. It really is a village that it takes to lift up and help engage our young people. Because what I like to say every day is that the criminal justice system should never be the answer, right? And we as prosecutors should not be the ones pushing all of these things. We need to work with all of our community partners and with all of the other folks that are providing services together to generate good outcomes.
Yeah. So what are some of your biggest challenges with the work that you're doing?
With the STRIDE program in particular, or just in
general?
general? Wow. Well, I mean, despite the fact that we are well-resourced, I mean, funding still is always an issue. It's not a blank check, right? And we still have an increase of caseloads every day. And we still, in a lot of ways, need more people, more bodies to do the work in a way that allows our attorneys and investigators not to have caseloads that are so large that it's untenable. That is the reality of it, that giving people the time to put the type of energy and need that they into these individual cases means we need to reduce those numbers. So that's a challenge. I would also say the political landscape that has really, and the partisan nature that has come into the prosecution space since I first became an elected prosecutor, and that was back in 2011 when I was solicitor. I have watched over time just how the dynamics of partisanship have changed how people view prosecution offices, oftentimes, sometimes in a negative way, and how that's affected how we approach the work and how we label certain prosecutors. And I find that to be troubling and problematic.
Can you give us a little example of what you mean by that?
Well, I mean, just Steve started talking at the top of your episode about this idea of, I think he said, I'm a law and order Democrat, right? Well, how did we even get here to the point where we associate law and order with just one particular party, right? The work that I do as an actor in the public safety space, I believe is my job is to hold offenders accountable for their bad actions every day. But at the same time that I'm holding people accountable, I believe, and my prosecution philosophy is that I can also give people an opportunity for second chances. And we do that through our diversion programs, through accountability courts, through a myriad of programs of understanding that that accountability does not necessarily equal prison. Accountability doesn't 100% equal convictions, right? There are levels and stages to these things. And I think what is really troubling for someone like me is that I do consider myself a reform-minded prosecutor because I believe that there are systemic changes that need to be made to our system in order for it to be fair for everyone. And that's something that we acknowledge every day. But there are some folks that would say, right, by having those views that I care more about offenders than I do victims.
Yeah.
Right? And that somehow if you choose to be reform, you are not law and order. And that if you are law and order, you can't possibly be reform. I reject that notion categorically because I believe in smart prosecution. And I think smart prosecution means that you must be doing both of these things in order to create a safe community for everyone. Period. Because if we don't get to the root of problems behind the choices that people have made within the criminal system, they are deemed to repeat those same mistakes. But if we work with people to understand why it is that they've made the decisions they make and help them to reform, then those folks will not re-enter the system. And that ultimately makes us all safe. Because at the end of the day, there's only a small subsection of people that go to jail or prison that aren't returning to our community. Let me say that again. There's only a small number of people that go to jail or prison that will never return to our community. That number is extremely small. You have to commit some, usually the worst of the worst crimes to get life without the possibility of parole or life sentences, right? The vast majority of people entering into our system are returning. So if we aren't working to create a space where their return can be fruitful, can be productive, address issues that put them there in the first place, then we are on a hamster wheel of a cycle that doesn't do anything for any of us.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely like this black and white thinking, this all or nothing kind of thinking that has really pigeonholed a lot of our political discourse. And to your point, like it's just not productive. It's not productive. And I would imagine poverty also is one of those factors that weighs heavily in our crime rates currently.
100%, and not just poverty. Like every single factor hits our criminal justice system, whether it is healthcare, access to healthcare, food instability, poverty, lack of education.
Yeah.
All of those things, as people fight to sustain themselves through those adversities, leads directly and connects directly to the criminal justice system. Because many people are not committing crimes because they're bad people. They're committing crimes because they're trying to survive.
Yeah.
Right? They're trying to put food on their table. They're trying to get and pay for health care. They are trying to find job stability and get paid a livable wage. And even a livable wage is not enough to live.
Yeah.
So all of these factors contribute to the increase in crime every day.
Yeah. And before we move on, I did want to ask one question about your budget. So where is all of your funding coming from?
It comes from a myriad of places. The vast majority of my funding comes from DeKalb County, but I also get funding from the state. I also get grant funding that comes also from the federal government. So it's a mixed bag and a mixed pot.
Got it. Got it. Okay, so during your tenure as DA, you established the Human Trafficking and Digital Crimes Unit, like you mentioned. Can you explain what that is and what the results have been?
Yes, so our Human Trafficking and Internet Crime Unit was sort of reborn out of the idea that we know that human trafficking continues to be a problem nationwide. And in particular, Atlanta, the metro Atlanta region, is a hub for human trafficking. Mm-hmm. Not because we're doing anything bad in DeKalb or Fulton. It's just because when you have the busiest, one of the largest airports in the country, that automatically makes you a place where trafficking is going to come through your city, no doubt. When you have the type of transit system we have, moving from the north to the south, you're going to be a target. And that's why Atlanta, and I am so grateful that I got an opportunity to be a part of First Lady Marty Kemp's Grace Commission when the governor came into office, and the First Lady made this a big passion project for her. To be asked to serve as a representative of an office and a person that was committed to human trafficking. I'm grateful for the resources that Governor Kemp has laid into this, understanding that this is a regional problem and that we need to work together. So doing our part in DeKalb, we were already doing the work, but we wanted to have folks that were dedicated, skilled, and had that specialized training. And as a result, our Human Trafficking and Internet Crime Unit is staffed with an advocate, an investigator, and a lawyer who have all the relationships across the Atlanta region, participate particularly in operations that are done regionally around Super Bowl, World Cup. Anytime we have thousands and thousands of visitors coming into our city, we know that human trafficking may be a part of that. And so we need those specialized units to work every day, not only at these bigger events, but also when it comes to the rescue of that 14-year-old girl that you hear about that's found in a hotel room. That's because we have people that are working behind the scenes, pulling every thread off every lead when a child goes missing, and all the signs are pointing that they have gotten engaged with someone perhaps on the internet or locally that has pulled them into a trafficking situation.
Yeah, I had the fortune, and I don't say that lightly because I love jury duty, but I had the fortune of serving on a federal grand jury. And one of the things that was really eye-opening to me was just how much human trafficking goes on in Georgia. And to your point, we're Atlanta. We have the busiest airport. Do you work with other jurisdictions, other DAs, and coordinate with them because that, like you said, it's a regional problem, not a...
It absolutely is. We work with our partners across jurisdictions and across state and federal partners all the time on many things. But when it comes to things like drugs, human trafficking, gangs, we know no one is stopping at a line going, oh, right,
that's yours.
I'm not going to cross over into Fulton. I'm not going to cross over to DeKalb or Cobb or wherever it is. We know that we all have to work together to solve these types of regional problems, right? And human trafficking is not a county problem. It is a regional problem. And that region is beyond, as we know, the scope of the metro, right? But if you're landing in the airport in Clayton, I can guarantee you that they are spanning out. They are leaving the metro area and continuing on to other parts across Georgia. So we all have to work together to spot the trends, to find victims, and to, more importantly, make sure we're arresting and prosecuting people engaged in the trafficking of people.
Yeah.
So I'll make one clarifying point before we move on. I describe myself as a common sense Democrat. People hurl the epithet law and order Democrat at me as a pejorative for the same reasons that you said. It's just, I call it a false dichotomy. It's not one or the other, as you eloquently stated. It takes a full spectrum to address this. Moving on, what is implicit bias? And how has that training that you've mandated impacted your office and how it approaches the work that you do?
So this probably is one of the most impactful things that we have done at the DA's office, and maybe probably one of the things that I'm most proud of. When I was elected in 2017, I had, the things that I wanted to accomplish in the first 90 days. And on that initial first 90 days list, it was to implement implicit bias training office-wide. Actually, I should say it was attorney-wide initially. That did not happen in the first 90 days, right? My first 90-day list was definitely, what's the word I will say? Ambitious, right? As any new leader coming in, is you have all of these ideas that you can just, wave a magic wand and it gets done. And you get there and you realize that it's a heavier lift, right? And you ease up on yourself maybe 6 months in when you're just like, I've been working super hard, but there's only so many hours in the day. So it did take me 2 years to get to that point. But the idea was really inspired by the leadership that I saw under when Eric Holder was our Attorney General. And then ultimately after that, Loretta Lynch. And one of the things the DOJ did at that time was they required all federal prosecutors to go through implicit bias training. And so I was really inspired by that. And I said, we should be doing that on the state level. We shouldn't run a prosecutor's office and not have our ADAs going through implicit bias training, because the work that we're doing is impactful, it is life-changing. And if we're not doing it in the most fair way possible, then we aren't doing our jobs well. And so I partnered with an organization to bring implicit bias training to our office. And again, initially my thought was everyone was going to get 4 hours of training, and it was primarily going to be the attorneys, right? But once we had that first training for our supervisors, which was 8 hours, I couldn't see how that could be reduced to 4. And so in that moment, I turned to our trainer and I said, we need to change our contract. Every person in my office, whether they are a trial assistant, a lawyer, an investigator, a victim advocate, or they answer the phones, everyone will go through 8 hours of implicit bias training. And we will continue this a couple of times every year so that every new person that joins our organization will get the same exact 8 hours of training as the people that were here when I implemented it. So we started that in 2019, and I'm proud to say that as we sit here in 2026, we continue to use that training and continue to put on that training a couple times a year to capture all of our new staff, as well as anybody that wants to sit through it. And I have sat through that training, I'm probably at 15, 16, 17 times.
That's great.
Wow.
And every single time I still take away a new nugget.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm curious to know if you learned something about yourself that was surprising or...
every time I go through it, I think what is reinforced for me, which is the message that our trainer, Dr. Bryant Marks, always tells us. And I think this is really important, especially when we're living in a world where people are using the words diversity, equity, and inclusion as somehow some negative or a bad word. Or if we say implicit bias, we are calling people like racist. When the reality of it is that when you are in this work, you learn that we all have bias because we are human and we have a brain, right? And implicit bias is always going to be there. It is a natural thing to have. I happen to have a bias towards my daughters more than I would to equally aged similar girls that were walking down the street. And that bias is because I gave birth to them, they are mine, and I love them. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's normal and natural. And so what implicit bias training does is, it says, yes, you have bias, and that's okay. There are circumstances where we accept that having bias is okay. But there are circumstances where your implicit biases can get in the way of you doing your important work in a fair way. And so what that training is meant to do is to help you see and identify where implicit bias may be coming into play in a negative way, and the things you need to do to counter that in that moment. And if we aren't doing that work in the prosecution space, where we are putting people on trial sometimes for their lives, then we aren't doing our jobs in a fair and just way.
Well, you made a good point that it's natural, right? It's human. I was taught a term of art years ago called the affinity impulse, which is we all have a natural affinity toward people who look like us, act like us, and think like us. Well, you don't know what anybody acts like and thinks like until you're actually talking to them. But we automatically know what each other look like. And we leap to all sorts of conclusions just based on that. That is absolutely true. But acknowledging that, recognizing it as a thing and not inherently bad thing is so important, because we're all normal, sentient, breathing human beings. So that's why I wanted to make sure I asked you about that and give you a chance to expound on it and how important that is.
Well, and I'm proud to say that we are the only office in the state of Georgia, and I believe the only prosecution office in the entire country that has made the commitment to do this work and is consistently making sure that every person is trained at this level.
That's great.
That's great. That's really wonderful. Okay, so what is the Institute for Innovative Prosecution, and how has that participation with the organization impacted how you do your job?
So the Institute for the Innovation of Prosecution is housed out of John Jay College in New York. And I first got involved with them actually when, I think I'd been in office just maybe 3 weeks as district attorney, and I got invited to participate in what's called an executive session that was slated to last for 3 years, where a group of prosecutors, academics, some defense lawyers, policy wonks, everybody was brought into a room, and over the course of 3 years, we met a couple of times a year to really drill down and work on issues related to criminal justice system and criminal justice reform. We talked about everything from police-involved shootings to, non-safety traffic stops, you name it. And as a result, the academics in the room were slated to write these fancy white papers for research. And they used our conversations and discussions as the backbone for doing that research. And that was, I'm really grateful that I got invited to that table, because it allowed the first 3 years so much of my education into how I wanted to move really came from listening to a myriad of thought leaders from across the country. And that was an invaluable experience that I got to have and got to bring that back to DeKalb. So later on, when I was asked to join the advisory board of the IIP, and executive session is just one of the many things that they do, I was thrilled to accept the invitation to be a part of the advisory board that just continues to support John Jay College in its efforts to create a program that is meant to support thinking about the future of prosecution and how we can prosecute in a better, more data-driven, more victim-centered, more evidence-based fashion.
Nice.
Excellent. So, obviously, your office plays a critical role in the criminal justice system. So, I'm curious about your thoughts on the term defund the police. When that term came out, how did that strike you? What does that mean to you? How did you react to that?
Well, it's always interesting to me because, as you said at the top of the program, I met a few people in the course of my lifetime that believe categorically in defunding the police and the abolition of prisons and jails and the criminal justice system. Yes, I have met those people. I can count them on one hand, right? So I would say I've met a whole lot of other people that want to live safely in their communities and understand that the answer is not the full and categorical defunction of police departments and the full and categorical elimination of the carceral system. Do there need to be fundamental changes to make sure that these systems are standing up in a safe and equitable way? 100%. And I think that should be our focus. And when we get into these debates where people, and I hate it because it's the furthest left and right that are having these conversations. You want to defund? Yes, I want to defund. All of that. But the reality of it is the vast majority of people are sitting back going, we don't want either one of these things to be in place, right? We don't want to lock up everyone and throw away the key, and we don't want to unlock the doors and let everyone out. And so we need to figure out a way to make sure that our system is working effectively for everyone.
Yeah, and it's funny because when you really dig into the people who chant defund the police, really what they're asking for is reform that comes with a lot more funding.
Right. Right. And you know, it's really interesting because there are different lines of thought around this, even in the circles that I run in with reform prosecutors. I had a reform prosecutor once at a meeting criticize me because the footprint in my office had gone from 157 to 300. And their position was, I would never ask for more funding. I would never ask for more people. In fact, I'm trying to reduce, you know, the number of people I have in my office because I don't believe that I should be a part of increasing the footprint of the carceral system. And my response was, well, that's great for your jurisdiction, right? And I'm not here, I have no idea what's going on in your jurisdiction. Now, I did know. It was nothing like, this was not someone that was running an office in a large metropolitan urban area.
Right.
Right. So you've got to meet people where you are in your jurisdiction and meet the needs of what are the crime trends happening for you. But what I say every day is, if I was still operating this office with 157 people that I had back in 2017, many of the programs, many of the work that we do wouldn't be getting done because we would be focused on what I call the statutory constitutional bare minimum, right? Our number one job per the Constitution is to go into court every day and prosecute cases in 10 superior courtrooms. Everything else that we do is bonus because it's what we choose to make a part of our programming. It is not mandated. So if you don't have the people to do that additional reform-minded, extra go-the-mile work that serves the community, we wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah.
So I firmly believe that increasing budgets and footprints means that we can do more. When you defund us, we are doing less. And less is not going to make you any less safe, nor make you have more trust in a system that perhaps you already have a high level of distrust for.
Or improve outcomes.
Well, you made a point about the partisanship. I've said from the beginning of this project that hyperpartisanship is killing us. It's destroying the ability to come together and think rationally and in a common sense manner. Now, as I sit here this minute, I don't know if the three of us have the solution for that, but it not only affects your work, it affects everything from budgets to national security, everything you can name, and it's worrisome to me, but I won't get off on that tangent right now.
Like I said, it has been a problem across all aspects of our society for some time, and it's growing. For me in this conversation, watching it creep in and explode in prosecution, especially when I hear words in terms like lawfare, right, being thrown around, and the insinuation that a prosecutor chooses to pursue a case or declines to pursue a case because of some political agenda. And what I can tell you is that while I can't say that those things have never happened in the history of prosecution, I can tell you that all the prosecutors I know, Democrats or Republicans, or the few independents that we have in our delegation here in Georgia, I have never known any of them to pursue or decline a prosecution because of some political association. Oftentimes, we have to make difficult choices. And sometimes those choices are made not because we don't believe that that person is guilty or not. A lot of the times it's like, but do we have the evidence to prove it? That's the thing we have to have. We can't just say, I believe it to be true, or the newspaper has written all the reasons why it should be, versus what is the competent, admissible evidence that we can produce beyond a reasonable doubt to get there. And that's where I struggle. And we see that play out, unfortunately, as our legislators, both here in Georgia and in DC, start to carry these campaign mantras about prosecutors that I think are harmful and not helpful to instilling public trust. And just this year, we had House Bill 369 that the governor, we're waiting to see what Governor Kemp is going to do. And that's the bill that took 5 metro counties and made those DA offices nonpartisan, while the other remaining circuits would be partisan elections for those district attorneys.
Well, yeah. Explain what was the thinking around that? What's your position on that?
Well, my position is that all DAs across the state of Georgia should be treated the same. If you want to make us all partisan, which we all are now, so be it. If you want to make us all nonpartisan, get in there and change the Constitution, you have the right to do that. But to pick and choose, and specifically choose the 5 DAs that represent the greater metropolitan Atlanta area, and we saw the legislators that put this bill up talk about, well, this is because we want to take politics and partisanship out of prosecution offices. Well, does that mean that we only want to take politics and partisanship out of prosecution offices in the city of Atlanta and not the rest of Georgia? Make it make sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
Do you think Kemp's going to sign it?
I don't know what Governor Kemp's going to do, but I hope, given everything that I have seen Governor Kemp do during his tenure as governor, that he will do the right thing and veto this bill, which is very unconstitutional. But if he doesn't do that, then I'm prepared to file a lawsuit because I believe that it is illegal, it is unconstitutional, and it's depriving the voters in the greater metropolitan Atlanta area of electing their leaders in the same way as people get to elect their prosecution and public safety leaders in every other part of Georgia. And
Yeah.
that's simply categorically unfair.
Yeah. Okay, so what are the major criminal justice reforms that you've advocated for?
Wow, so many.
Yeah.
Right? So where do I start there? Because I think reform is ongoing, right? And we continue to have conversations where we need to look at what's right and what's wrong. There are some things that I would advocate for that are just probably not going to happen in the state of Georgia that might be able to happen in another part of the country. I mean, we see that with many, many, many states have decriminalized marijuana, right? And that has not happened here in Georgia, despite the fact that many people have pushed for it. People talk about cash bail, the elimination of cash bail. I believe that there needs to be a reform in cash bail because whether you should be remaining in custody during the pendency of your criminal case should not be based on your bank account, but it should be based on whether you are a threat to the community if you were released on the outside or if you were a threat to flee the jurisdiction and make yourself not avail yourself of prosecution. But we have all of this focus on money. And when we focus on money, the people that get hurt most are the have-nots and not the haves. Because if you have millions of dollars, you can post $100,000 bail on a serious charge. That does not necessarily mean that you are making our community more safe than the very poor person that doesn't have two nickels to rub together and could never dream of posting $100,000 bail. So I really would like us to have some conversations about cash money bail and how that relates to safety. And I'd like us to think about how we can move towards a system where we're protecting our community by really evaluating, not in financial terms, but in safety terms, which I think is what we most and should most care about.
Interesting.
I could go on and on because I think the reality of it is that we do have a system that we are trying to reform because it was a system that was built out of systemic racism from its inception. And so we didn't build something from the beginning that was created and laced in fairness and equity. So when you are reforming a system that was built off the backs of something that was harmful and carceral and meant to be biased against many folks, the reform of that is difficult, right? Because it was laced from the beginning with some bad intentions, right? Not to say that there weren't good intentions along the way, but separating out those two things can be a very difficult thing. And the problem is that we are living in a society where many of our leaders are not willing to acknowledge where we started. And if you don't acknowledge where we started and the harm that has been created from that, then we're not going to get to the place we need to go.
Yeah, and I feel like we're beating a dead horse with it, but really, like, the word reform also carries so much. It's so loaded, right? When really, it just means improving the system, and we should all be striving to improve everything that we're doing every single day. I mean, as humans, we should constantly be seeking improvement in our daily lives, and so why that word carries so much, contention is kind of beyond me when really we all should be striving for better.
100%. And the reality of it is that we should be learning from our mistakes and not repeat the things of the past.
And acknowledging that we've
acknowledging them.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the only way to get better.
Continuous process improvement.
Yeah. Okay, so in the political realm, women in general are improving, but specifically African American women are increasing their ascent. Yet only 1% of African American women are currently serving as DAs nationwide. What do you think's behind that?
Well, it's the systems that we talked about. I mean, these roles, district attorneys' offices, I mean, have historically been occupied by white men. Like that's the history of prosecution. That's the history of many positions, right? And so a change in systems and the ability to make those strides is not something that's easily done overnight. And it is not always easy in many communities to even really overcome. When I ran for district attorney in 2017, it was, I guess that would have been in 2016 when I ran, it was like unheard of for an incumbent DA to be challenged. People didn't run against incumbents. Incumbents didn't lose, right? And when incumbents left, generally speaking, they tapped their successor. And we see that in a lot of roles, but obviously I'm just focused on DA races today. The people that they brought up, their chief assistant, their number one deputy, they make sure that they have secured them to be the next DA. And so for me, running as someone that wasn't in the DA's office and challenging an incumbent was a really big deal. And people assumed that, well, incumbents don't lose. Well, I proved that wrong in 2016. But an incumbent DA had not lost in the metro area and really in most of Georgia up until that time.
Wow.
It had not really happened. But then after I did it, you started to see a lot of races. And we saw that happen in 2018 and really in 2020 when incumbents started being challenged and people started paying attention across the country to DA's races. Because now also communities were understanding, hey, you know, I've always maybe followed who my sheriff was, maybe I followed who my judges were, maybe not really, but no one was really looking at prosecutor roles. And we started to see across the country that people were starting to really say, all right, these decisions locally for me are being made by the district attorney, and maybe I need to get out there and find out what my district attorney is all about. And that's where we've seen the growth of Black women, although we still represent less than 1% of chief elected prosecutors in the country. It's still a small, exclusive club. But most of the women that are in these spaces, none of them were tapped by their predecessor. All of them are women like myself that got out there and ran because they wanted to serve their communities and ran on a platform that the voters in their communities craved and wanted them to be in those spaces and to do the work.
Yeah.
Well, you make a good point about incumbency, and you know, it's interesting. I hadn't thought about this in a while, but 2016 was kind of a turning point here in DeKalb County because that was the same year I was elected, and I defeated an incumbent, and no incumbent county commissioner had been defeated in like 24 years when I won. And then since that time, it's happened two or three different times. So you're a trendsetter.
Well, and I love that too. I mean, we have this discussion nationally about term limits, and you know, we do have a bit of a term limit lever, which is elections. And you know, I applaud you for running against an incumbent, because that does, a lot of people shy away from that challenge, and we need more people stepping up fearlessly to run. So that's amazing. And you're in your third term as DA. You served as Solicitor General prior to that. Looking forward, what are your political ambitions?
Well, for me, I just want to continue to serve my constituents in my community in the way that I feel like I'm being most impactful. And I will continue to evaluate myself in that regard. Is how can I continue to move the needle forward on safety, on reform, on meeting the needs of my community in whatever space, I'm being called to do that. I hope to continue to do that.
All right.
So as a corollary to that, who are your political heroes and your heroes in the legal community?
Wow. Okay. So one of my political heroes is former Vice President Kamala Harris. She has been an impactful part of my life since I won District Attorney. Back in 2016, that was the first time that we met, and she poured into me from the moment that we met, given her prior experience as the DA in San Francisco. And so we met when she was running for the U.S. Senate. And so I am grateful to her because from that moment on, she always made herself available to me and supported me and gave me really good advice throughout the years. And so to have her mentorship, her leadership, and really just the love that I have felt from her personally in my life has been a gift that I wish the whole country had that opportunity to get in the way that I have personally. So she is a political hero of mine because she has really done such good work from her times as DA in San Francisco all the way to serving, as Vice President of the United States. And who knows, we'll see what happens in the future if she is going to serve us in another way. Locally, people that I've looked up to, I have to say, Justice Sean LaGrua on the Georgia Supreme Court is someone that's been invaluable in my life. And Sean, as she makes me call her, because we've known each other a long time, all the way back to when she was Solicitor General of DeKalb. And I wouldn't be sitting here if it weren't for her. I've said that in a number of interviews. She really pushed me to see within myself what I was capable of before I ever ran for even my first political office, which a lot of people don't even know or realize that I ran for state court judge in 2010. And so what I will say is she always saw in me first, sometimes what I couldn't see in myself. And because of her and because of her guidance and her advice and helping me along the way, I now never look in the mirror and question what I'm capable of. And I am grateful for her for helping for me to really to instill that in me.
Aw.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Excellent. My neighbor Connie White used to work for Judge LaGrua.
Yeah.
That's fun. Small world.
So as citizens, what are the most important things that we can do to help prevent crime, help make your job easier?
If you see something, say something. I mean, it's just that simple. But even though that's a simple term, it's not to many, because there are some people in the community for a number of reasons, whether it's fear, right? Because they are living in communities where talking to law enforcement or the police is not a good thing, but a bad thing, right? There's a lack of trust, or they feel that they won't be adequately protected, which is 100% fair. So I always say, if you can, be brave, be brave. And if you want to ask for help in order to be safe, just know that there are partners and people in my office that are willing to help you do that. That would be the first thing. The second thing I would say, and we haven't really talked a lot about this, but really there are things that we can do to protect ourselves. And we spend a lot of time in our office on education, educating our community on how to keep themselves safe. We can't prevent everything. Like I can't pick the date that this particular fast food restaurant is going to be, the subject of an armed robbery. I can't guess that. But what I can say is if you are a lawful gun owner, you should be using a trigger lock or a, gun safe to house your firearm. Because if you don't, that firearm could find its way into the hands of a child or a bad actor. Like those are the things I can say definitively. So there are things that I say, there are things that we want you, the public, to do to protect yourself. Understanding that I can't prevent everything because I can't tell you what's going to happen when you get in your car or when you go to that restaurant. But I can tell you that there are certain definitive things that if you do, you would be involved in preventing something bad happening to yourself or something bad happening to someone else in the community, just on that little small but very big impactful thing.
Yeah, with my daughter being 16 now, every time she goes out in the world when I'm not there, I'm like, make good choices, be smart, be aware of your surroundings. Like it, sometimes when my husband and I are being casual about it, we're like, don't be an idiot, and really like the people leaving their guns in the car, like it drives me crazy why anyone would, and we see this all the time, leave their gun in the car. There's car thefts happening all the time. Like, what do you think is going to happen?
And that's why we have, built a campaign in our office around giving away gun safes and trigger locks. So for as long as we have them, and we continue to acquire more every year, if there's anyone that is watching your podcast that needs, that is and this is a campaign to lawful gun owners, because I am not anti-gun ownership.
Right.
It's a Second Amendment right. But what I am for is what we call keeping it real, right? We want people to be responsible, educated, and safe and lawful gun owners. And that requires responsibility.
Yeah.
And it's your responsibility, if you are going to use your right to own a firearm, that you do so in a way that keeps you and the rest of the community safe. So if you need a trigger lock or a gun safe and you want a free one, you can come by our office and request one, and we will not only give it to you, we've got QR codes and videos on our website to show people how to actually use those devices so that they are effective and safe.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I recently had my gun license renewed and went down to what was the old recorder's court to go through that. And I was given a gun safe. I already have one, but I was given a free one, another one. So that was awesome.
Yeah, my dad's a big 2A advocate, and he was an NRA trainer, and he was always like, I want to get you a gun. So I finally was like, all right, I'll accept your gun, but you have to give me a gun safe along with it. And so he did. And so if you are a gun owner and you need a gun safe, where should you go?
Well, you can find information on how to acquire a free trigger lock or a free gun safe on our website, the DeKalb DA's website, www.dekabda.org, and just go to the tab about gun safety. There, you will also find videos if you own a gun safe or a trigger lock and you still aren't really sure how to use it or install it. You will see some videos that can teach you how to use those devices safely and effectively.
That's great. Another question about see something, say something. So there have been a few occasions where we've been on the MARTA and we have seen what either looked to be like a gang grooming behavior or potentially like human trafficking, something going on. And I'm just curious, like it didn't necessarily seem like something that I should call 911 about, but it felt like something that maybe we should have alerted somebody to. What's the process for alerting that see something, say something about human trafficking or gang behavior?
So what I would say, and this would be for any non-emergency situation, obviously if you are in the midst of something and it's an emergent situation, you should 100% call 911. But a lot of people are saying like, I saw something, I'm not sure what it is, it felt kind of fishy or suspicious,
Yeah.
but who was I to like figure this out because it wasn't like clearly and blatantly a crime. I would say, you know, if you're on MARTA and you see something, when you grab off, there are MARTA police all throughout all the stations. Just go and report what you saw. You know, maybe remember which train you were on, which line you were on, because a lot of those places, there's cameras, so they can always go back and review the footage. But just giving that information, because you don't know what other people might have reported, and your part of the story might be a way to connect some dots. If you are in your homes, in your communities, I mean, I don't know anybody that's not on, you know, what's that, like neighborhood?
Next door.
Next door. I try to stay off next door,
Yeah.
if I'm being honest. I get enough of my own real alerts. I don't need, but I will say, you know, my neighbors know I'm the district attorney. So if something happens, I start getting the text messages like, Sherry, what's going on? We know that you know what's happening. Or, you know, people not sure when they should use those emergency lines. And so I'd say if you see something suspicious in your neighborhood, but it's not necessarily rising to like, oh, I just saw a crime, I would call the non-emergency number at the police precinct associated with wherever you live. Every police department has a non-emergency line where you can call and say, I just saw this. This isn't an emergency, but someone needs to know, or here's the information. And we encourage people to do that rather than just saying nothing, because you don't know what you might have witnessed. And then secondarily, or third, shall I say, so many of us have Ring cameras or security cameras around our home. So if you do have those and law enforcement or somebody knocks on your door looking for that information, be willing to share those clips because those can be amazingly impactful and helpful for solving situations that happen in neighborhoods. People are looking for that Ring footage or that surveillance footage that could be critical in really public safety.
Yeah, less critical, but we solved a case of a missing dog on our street thanks to a Ring camera, which was really interesting. But no missing humans, just missing dogs so far. Okay, so now we're going to turn to something fun. Tell us about your family.
Oh, wow. That is fun. So I have a husband and we have 2 daughters. I've been married for going on, I think, 22 years. Although my brain keeps trying to say, I was like, is it 23 or is it 22? You
lose
count
track
my
after a
children,
certain number.
right?
Yeah.
But we have 2 beautiful daughters that are 17 and 19. One is a junior in high school and one is finishing up her first year in college. And so we are incredibly proud. And I feel really blessed and grateful to have such an amazing family.
Yeah. Did you grow up here?
I didn't. I grew up born and raised in Baltimore. I'm a B-more girl. And most of my parents still live there, my sister and brother-in-law, my aunts and uncles. So I still have a lot of family in Baltimore. And I went to undergrad at Villanova University on the main line outside of Philly. And then I went to Emory Law School here in Atlanta, which is how I made my way first to DeKalb County and to Atlanta, with no plans to stay. But as many people that come to Atlanta kind of fall in love with the region.
Yeah.
And build their life here. And I was grateful to do just that.
That's awesome. All right. So Steve and I always talk about our favorite movies and TV shows. Do you have a favorite movie?
Wow. So now I'm going to give away something that people are probably really unexpected. I don't have a favorite movie, but I have a favorite franchise.
Okay.
And it's probably going to be shocking to some people as they find this out, but I am a huge fan of the Fast and Furious franchise. I have seen every Fast and Furious movie, with the exception of Tokyo Drift, that I don't claim, at least 4 or 5 times.
Wow.
Yeah.
Excellent.
It's weird.
I have not watched any of them.
Wow. That's weird.
I've been on the ride at Universal or whatever it was, but I haven't.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any. What is it about those movies that you like?
I don't know. I mean, certainly it can't be the fact that they're committing like serious crime across the United States and then, you know, it went multinational, right? International. But, you know, here's what I will say. That is an underlying theme of the Fast and Furious brand. If you know anything about watching the movies and the characters, is that they are embedded in the fact that they are family. And so I think what brings me back to the franchise is their commitment to always supporting and being there for one another, no matter what. And, you know, of course, there's the action, right? And the driving and the explosions and all of the action-y things that you like in a summer blockbuster. But I think what drives me to really just connect with wanting to see the next one is really those connections of bringing together a village of people that say, I care about you, I'm here for you, and I'm always going to support you.
That's great. Well, and the first couple movies in that series were filmed here in Atlanta.
Not the first couple, but sort of in between, like maybe 3, 4, and 5.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
But yes, we were filming here in Atlanta for a while.
Yes. You're part of the family.
You know, I feel it deeply, deeply.
So I'm going to ask you a corollary question, and this is not intended to get you in trouble with your husband in any way.
Oh,
but
okay.
do you have any celebrity crushes that you want to share with us? Anything you want to disclose?
A celebrity crush.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so my celebrity crush may not be known to many people unless you are in what I call the Pello Universe cult, right? Peloton is a cult.
Okay.
For those of us that are in the Peloton universe working out, my celebrity crush is one of my instructors. His name is Adrian. He inspires me every day to work harder, to look better. And he's definitely my celebrity crush.
Oh, I love that.
All right. Very good.
He's in your
Adrian, huh?
He's in your space every day.
I get to see him every day.
Okay. All right. We won't belabor that.
I love that.
Okay. Along those lines, similarly, you've got a big, important, and I'm sure sometimes stressful job. So how do you attend to yourself? How do you relax? How do you take care of DA Sherry Boston?
Well, my self-care journey has been a difficult one, right? I have committed myself the last couple years to really being more intentional about my health and my well-being, both physical and mental. And that was a goal that I really took to heart, really starting in 2025. I don't know if it's like turning 50 that gets you like thinking about your future. But both my husband and I went on a real journey around this. And so I started engaging a lot more intentionally around meditative practices, making sure exercise and diet and nutrition and maintaining stress levels and really looking at these things, understanding that I live in a really stressful work life that I can't change. I can't change the fact that this job is stressful, but I can choose to try to change how I react to the circumstances that I'm faced with every day. And so that has been a big part of the last, year and a half, almost 2 years for me. And I got back to a hobby that I had given up for a while, which is reading. I always was a book lover, but I found myself having less and less and less time to do those things. And so one of the things that I did do in January of 2025, December of 2024, is I made the decision that I was going to dramatically reduce my watching of 24-hour news television.
Yeah.
Because I used to do that. And there's still, obviously it's still important for me to stay current on events. I read the AJC every morning. I read the New York Times. It's like, so I still am trying to make sure I'm staying current on what's happening in the world, but watching the pundits 24/7, first thing in the morning, all the way up to going to bed. And I was that person. I could tell you the lineup from 5 to about 9:30, and then the lineup from about 7 to midnight. Like I, was on a loop. So I decided to give that up in favor of not turning on the television, which meant that I needed to figure out how to fill my brain with that space. And so my husband bought me a Kindle, which I was averse to because I love the feel of books, always have. I don't even like hardback books. I was like, paperbacks, give me hardbacks. I like that feel. And so for years and years and years, as people talked about Kindles, I'm like, no, I can't read on a screen. It's not a book. It's too light. It's not going to feel the way I want it to feel. And so, but I had to give in because in order for me to do this thing I wanted to do, I had to recognize that I couldn't carry around like 5 hardbacks everywhere I go.
Yeah.
And so I finally gave him permission to do it. Now my husband also has one. And I'm proud to say that last year I read 26 books.
That's
wow.
amazing.
Excellent.
What are you reading right now?
I'm reading right now The God of the Woods.
Okay. I haven't heard of
Almost
that one.
done that. And I just finished Kin by Tayari Jones, which was incredible. And as you know, she is a wonderful, amazing female African-American writer that based a lot of her books right here in Atlanta based off her own experiences.
Interesting.
So I just finished Kin and I'm almost done The God of the Woods, which will have me hitting I think I'm on book 9 of the year. So
great.
Well
in my
done.
Kindle, I'm on target to meet my goal.
Excellent.
I'm reading, a friend of mine turned me on to Octavia Butler.
Yes.
And so I've been reading Kindred, and it's just incredible.
Okay.
Just incredible. But I will say the former archivist of the United States, Colleen Shogun, is also a crime writer. And she's written a series of books that take place in DC that are all like murder mysteries.
Ah, okay.
And so there's like 8 of them, I think. And I have the stack now. I need to start getting through those, but might be something you'd be interested in checking
Well,
out.
I will take that name. I consistently am adding, I can't even tell you, I have probably about 60 books on my want to read
Nice.
list. I'm always adding things as I get ideas just because I try to mix up the things that I'm sort of reading and I try to, make different choices and get engaged in different ways. And it's so you got to take people's recommendations to do that.
Yeah. Well, speaking of recommendations, do you have any advice for someone seeking political office or a career in law?
Wow. So what I would say is that if you are considering going to law school, open your mind to the possibility of doing more than just the traditional practice of law. I think that it's so normal and natural to think that you go to law school and you become a lawyer. There is so much that you can do with a law degree that has sometimes very little to do with the practicing of law every day. So I tell people, if you're going to law school, expand your horizon and really explore what is feeding your soul, right? And where that law degree might be useful. It doesn't necessarily mean you are a litigator, a trial lawyer, or a transactional lawyer. And don't feel like you have to put yourself in those boxes. If you are considering a run for political office, I would say just do it, right? I think the thing that holds people back more than anything is that they're either waiting for someone to ask them to do it, or they're waiting because they feel like they're not ready, or that they don't have the bona fides to do it. What I'm here to tell you is that you're never going to be fully ready. There's no perfect time. And if you're waiting for the perfect circumstances, it's never going to arrive. And at the end of the day, you are qualified. Look in the mirror and say that to yourself, and find the strengths that you have to propel you. And if you have the support of your community and they are willing to elect you, you can do it.
Yeah. Yeah, having looked under the hood, I can testify that not everybody running for office is as qualified as they should be, or you think you should be, or
right. But and 100%. But I've also realized there's a lot of people that are a lot of really good people that are waiting to check off some boxes of qualifications, while someone else that perhaps hasn't checked any of those boxes is running full steam,
fearless
into the fray.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean when I say you don't have to check every box, but understand that you do check a box. And if you have something to offer and give, it will be seen.
That's great.
So as we get ready to wind down, are there any final thoughts that you want to share with our audience?
Wow, I feel like I've shared a lot today about me and the work that we've done, but I think the thing that I would just end with is that I think what we are doing in the DeKalb Judicial Circuit and the DeKalb DA's office is fundamentally some of the most impactful work of any prosecution office in the state. And many in the country, because we really are wanting to change the system for the better, for the people that we touch, for the outcomes that we can give, for the community that we can change. And I am really, really proud, again, that we are doing it in both a data-driven way and a victim-centered way. And I think if you do those two things under the umbrella of in a fair and equitable way, you can't go wrong.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, DA Boston, for sharing your insights with us today. It was certainly informative. I hope it was at least a little bit of fun for you. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today, and we wish you nothing but the best of luck in all of your future endeavors. Emily, thank you again for sharing the foxhole with me.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. Any final comments that you have to share?
I just want to say thank you. This was a really informative conversation, and I hope that our listeners will appreciate some of the advice and information that you shared today.
Excellent. Well, thanks again to Reeves & Associates for sponsoring today's program. As always, thanks again to the team here at the Scottdale Podcast Cafe for doing such a great job in supporting us. We really appreciate it. And for our audience, if you have any ideas about possible guests or future topics, please visit our website. Drop us a note at servesomebodypodcast.com or via social media. Also note that our episodes are available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. We understand that time is the most valuable resource that any of us have. So we sincerely thank you for spending some of your precious time giving us a listening ear. We will never take that for granted. These are indeed serious times, so until the next time, just remember to think for yourself and don't fall for the show. Goodbye.
You're gonna serve somebody in a booth or on the street. You're gonna serve somebody. Every vote, every voice, every tweet might be the Lord, the dollar, or the folks who can't speak loud. You're gonna serve somebody. So say who you're serving now. They got headlines dressed like heroes.